Yeah, training.
Very good morning, friends. How are you all today? Good morning. Yes, today is a good Wednesday. Tomorrow is a public holiday here in Selangor. I believe it is too in Penang, if I'm not wrong. Okay, so many of our colleagues have actually taken a little bit of a holiday to make it a long weekend that starts from today. And that's good. I believe many of you would require that a bit of a rest and also regeneration. Huh? Uh, all right. Okay. So for today, what we are going to do is in today's session, we are going to talk about the checklist for online lessons or what you call online classes, lah, blended hybrid kind of classes. And also we are going to touch on online assessment. Now, I think it is important for us to understand that even though we are back down to the physical nature of conducting classes, however, the understanding of these online methods and also principles are also is still important. Not only is it important because we will not know or it's very difficult for us to determine if those kind of environment will not come back again as what happened on in 2020. However, it is also the reason why it is important is also because when we want to, in a way, differentiate or make ourselves unique and to understand our client itself, there could be times where the physical nature of classes will not be visible. Okay, so we have clients, and our clients are our students, and our students are varied in their types and also their needs and wants. Some of them who are actually very much right after secondary school could, or in a way, enjoy the physical nature of what classes are being held as how it is today. However, there are also a certain group of our clientele where they are more working individuals, okay, working individuals or those that are not physically being able to attend those kind of physical classes. Then maybe online classes will be the way to go. So this is where the balance comes in. Now, why am I stressing on this is because for us here in Malaysia, majority of our students are full-time students. All right. I would dare say, and I do not have the actual numbers over there, in excess of 95% or maybe 90 to 95% of our students are full-time students. Full-time students meaning they are sponsored by a particular body. It could be a parent, it could be a foundation or society, and they are here to study. Thus, it is very feasible for them to be here on the physical nature. Now, in many different environments or even different countries, especially if I give you an example, our partner, which is in Australia itself, UOW, the percentage of full-time students versus working adults, or what you call students that are also working, are somewhat different to what we have. All right, ours 95% and above. Some of you may even say, Gabe, no, like 99% and above. All right, but over there it is different. The percentage is actually much lower. A lot of the students over in Australia, in UOW Australia, are actually working individuals or working adults. Okay, one reason is because if you look into the type of programs that they have, most of their programs are degree and above. Okay, so they are looking at the Tahap 7, Level 7, and Level 8 degree programs, which are your masters and your PhDs. So majority are actually working individuals. Also, over there, maybe the environment is a little bit different from us. A lot of the people there, upon completing their secondary studies, they go and work, they find a way of survival, and from there, then they will decide to learn. Now, if you look at those kind of environments, then the physical classes are actually not that attractive for them, which is something very true. The feedback that we get over from Australia is a lot of them are actually aiming or are very much into the online methods of delivery and online classes itself. And that is what is attracting them to study, because the physical aspect does not allow them to do so. Okay, so this is where learning comes in. Now, when we talk about online delivery or what we call online learning itself, we need to understand that it doesn't have to be 100% online learning. A lot of institutions that are very much online kind of institutions do not, in a way, 100% of their program totally online. It could be majority of the delivery will be done online. However, maybe once a month, the students will still need to go to a learning center. I believe many of you will know this. They come to a learning center or they come down to campus for discussion. The human contact discussion is also important over there. So they will discuss, they will work with their colleagues, but maybe it is only once a month or maybe twice a month every fortnight. All right. So how do we regard that? That is basically also, in a way, a blended kind of learning environment, which the market finds it very attractive and conducive for them, because many of them are actually working individuals. That is why we find that this session here on online learning itself and online lessons and delivery is still somewhat relevant. It's still somewhat relevant in today's environment. Okay, so for today itself, today's session, I'm looking at 2.5 to maybe around 3 hours because there are quite a few areas that we will need to cover over there. As I go through, I will give you all breaks for you to do whatever you need to do to regenerate the whole session itself. So for today's learning outcome, basically what we are planning to achieve will be on these few key elements over here. What are the key factors that affect pre, during, and post online delivery? Online practices to ensure effective outcome. So how do we ensure the effective outcome itself? And then we are also going to talk about the differentiation between formative and summative assessments. Okay, the importance, for me, I'm a strong advocate of formative. Okay, I'm a strong advocate of formative assessment and anything to do with formative, because once formative is there, it is done in a proper manner, then the summative side will normally fall in place. And finally, we are going to look on areas about online assessments. What are the challenges faced? How do we go about? More so with today's dawn of not so much of a dawn, but the impact of AI towards education itself. How AI has actually impacted the way that we assess students. Okay, so as I said in my in one of those sessions quite recently to my audience, is it is continuous competition or continuous chase that both sides are. So we have AI coming out, students using AI technologies and tools, and then we have companies such as like Turnitin coming out with new patches and versions to overcome this. Okay, and then AI will come out with a new version to overcome that, and it goes on. So it is continuous over there. So if you are to ask me, are the current tools and mechanisms that we have to overcome or to identify if students are using AI in their work 100% effective? I would say no, definitely not. But are there? Yes, there are. Okay, yes, they are. Things such as like Turnitin in their recent update has come out with one a very effective update that has managed to, in a way, catch or identify if students have used AI in their work. Okay, it has. Now, how long will this last, or how long will the effectiveness be? Very hard to say. Okay, because in the recent, even ChatGPT version 4 has reached a certain level that certain of these tools are unable to identify if it is being used. So these tools are in their continuous upgrading and change to overcome AI itself. Now, do we in a way forgo, neglect, and say that don't use AI? No, definitely not. Definitely not. These are tools. This is how it was like in the 60s and 70s where the pocket calculator was introduced. You know, the calculator itself. So people think that that's it lah. Mathematical test, no need to do already lah if there's a calculator. Now, this is a continuous cycle. Technology will come out to change the way that we think, to change the way that we behave, to change the way that we evaluate. So we itself, we need to be one step ahead. We need to understand and be one step ahead to identify how can this technology impact the way that we do our work, not only in the way that it impacts the way we do, but also assist the way of educating the students itself, because the students need to be relevant when they go out to work. Okay, so basically that is what we are going to look at over there. So in the first part, we are going to look at will be the delivery, online delivery itself, which I am going to start. All right, so are you guys all right? Ready? Should be good. All right. Ta-da. Okay, so I think one key element here that I would like to stress upon is this online learning model. This online learning model is a very basic model that I concurred out based on the observation that we have gone through in the past few years. It is also based very much on the Survection model. For those of you who look into service itself, the Survection model is one that has a high impact on service and the service experience. So basically what we see here, this is called the trifecta of online learning model. All right, so there are a few key elements that will impact the effectiveness of online delivery. So of course, on the left on the screen over there, we start off with this thing called available technology. All right, the technology itself, do we have the correct technology? So staff and students, whether are there suitable technology and whether is there a reliable infrastructure. Infrastructure reliability plays a very critical role. Okay, so you may have brilliant students, brilliant lecturer, but the infrastructure no good and online learning will not happen. Okay, because the thing about online learning is it is an experience. So it is like in an experience, if the technology is not there, so what happens is the whole experience will be impacted. It is like for many of us, for those of us who use Astro, when it rains heavily, what happens? It jitters, all right? Now, today it's a little bit different. Your Astro box will link directly to your internet and it will run. But when it started to rain, every time when it rains, that's it. So if the rain is for 3 hours, you don't need to watch Astro for 3 hours. So basically, we have the source, which is the content itself from Astro is good. Then we have the audience, us, watching it is good and enthusiastic, ready to watch, but the infrastructure is poor, sorry. And because it is poor, the experience will then be impacted. So available technology is one key element. Second part here will be staff competency, all right? Basically lah, all right? So here is motivation, competency, and initiative of the particular staff itself, whether that person is motivated, competent to deliver the goods, okay? So infrastructure good, student good, lousy movie. Movie boring, students won't enjoy also, all right? And of course, we have the student readiness. As they say, it takes two to clap. Okay, sometimes we try so much, we push to the students, and students just give you a blank look. All right, so students' readiness here is not about students' competency. There's competency and readiness, which is very much different. You can have a very intelligent student, competency is there, but the readiness or the mindset is not there. Now, what is this mindset concept? Is basically students wanting to learn or accepting that this is the way to learn. That is called readiness. All right. So if you all remember where the MCO started, students' readiness was very poor. Why? Because there were a lot of information coming out that was a little bit confusing. We don't blame the sender of the message during that time because there were a lot of uncertainty. Where the government said 2 weeks, then after that 2 more weeks, then after that another 2 more weeks, and subsequently it went on. So when the government said 2 weeks in the first time, students' readiness is, why do I need to adapt? 2 minggu saja mah, no need to adapt, no need to learn, no need to accept the changes. So even though when they were online classes, they were like this, don't worry lah, no need to pay attention lah. In 2 weeks time, I'm going to see Miss Bridget again, then she will explain to me face to face. So readiness is not there. Intelligent student, why? The reason is because to be ready, this acceptance of readiness takes effort. It takes effort, ladies and gentlemen. It really takes effort because you're going to change the norm. You are going to change the normal way of you doing things. All right, you're going to change the normal way of doing things. All right, so that is why when students are not ready, wanting to learn, whatever you input into them, the absorption level will be very low. So once students accept reality, hey, this is how it is going to be, then in their nature itself, they will adapt to the situation. They will take further action to ensure they comprehend and they learn. Okay, so if I think, okay, this is just my thought. If when MCO started and the government was very clear, I mean, we don't blame them. I mean, nobody knows anything during that time. This is going to be for the next 2 months. Of course, they're going to create a lot of panic, number one. But in the academic context over here, I believe the students will then need clarity. They will say, sir, it's going to be 2 months. How? So we will explain to them, this is how you're going to learn. This is how it's going to be. Your assessment, because it happened in March, right? So in 2 months, it's going to be a final exam, and your final exam will continue, will go on. Then the students will now have to adapt, because the environment has changed. And that is called students' readiness. Okay, so that is why many a times we have a bit of a headache, especially those of you lecturers or my colleagues, my friends over here who teach semester 1 students in the diploma. All right. Why? Because a lot of these students, they're coming in from secondary school. Good students, but their readiness, whether are they ready to learn in this speed, whether are they ready to learn in this kind of environment, may not be there. So it takes time for them to in a way accept those changes. It takes time. So, but at times it takes too long for them. The whole curve of acceptance is a little bit too long. When it is long, they will lose out. That is why we need to ready the student. Make sure that they realize, guys, You join tertiary education. This is what is expected from you. This is what you must do. Okay, so that is students' readiness. So there are these three prongs over here. Okay, you take away any one of this and online learning will be impacted. Definitely it will be impacted. Okay, you can take away technology, you can have the other two, it will be impacted. So for us, we need to ensure that all of these three are there, right? You and me as educators. However, there is, of course, the shadow forces. The shadow forces are external forces that has an impact directly on this triangle itself. So this could be things such as like retention, policies, procedures, favorable rules, and so on, rules and regulations. So this could be organizational factors that impact us. Okay, like if all these three elements are clear, but policies and procedures are not, or maybe there are a lot of rules and regulations that make me not allowed to do certain things, then it will impact the way that I deliver. All right. I believe for many of you, when MCO impacted, there was a lot of uncertainty, yet there were quite a bit of flexibility in the way that we did things. All right. To a certain extent, we even started using Google Forms as one method of assessment. It was not the best. It was not brilliant, but it was a stopgap measure. So we were allowed to do this kind of things due to fast action that needs to be done. Okay. So basically these are it. Now, I just want to give an example. Okay. This is an academic example between UG and Penang. In UG, we are not allowed to install anything in our computer. This is a regulation that has been imposed onto all the staff in Selangor. Okay. Well, however, correct me if I'm wrong, in Penang, maybe not today, but I know you all were allowed to install softwares on your own in your computer. Now, during a situation where it is severe, you need to take action, you need to make decisions that would impact students' performance. If there were a lot of limitations, a lot of good methods could not be used. So there were certain things that were more favorable that allowed our Penang colleagues to use on their students and not in UG itself. Why? So if you look at this trifecta, everything was there. Those are called shadow forces. Those are called shadow forces. Am I for it? I'm not saying yes or no, but I'm just giving you as an example. So my friends in Penang, are you still allowed to install things in your laptop? No? Any answers? Yes? Yes. But yeah, good. So it does help. It does help. All right. It does help in the way. Here, of course, there is this security. They have they have decided it in that way due to certain factors. Okay. Okay. So this is the trifecta element over there, which gives us a start on when we talk about online learning. What are the key elements that will have an impact to us? Two, next thing here over there. When we do online delivery with, let me admit our colleague. When we do online delivery or online learning itself, we have to visualize that very much of the whole element of what we are doing is actually we are doing a show. We are like running an event, guys. We are running an event. All right. So you plan for an event itself. Okay. Very good. See, but you gave an example over there, which is something that over in UG, maybe we could not have do it. We could not have done it. Okay. So when we run and when we do online lessons or even online training or any kinds of training, like even what I'm doing now, very much we have to, or in a way, equate it like running an event. So when you run an event, there's always the pre-event, the live event, and the post-event. All right. So the pre-event is the prep and promotion. So before you do the event, what do you do? Okay. Live event is during the event itself. That is what you do. And of course, the post-event is the event follow-up. After the event, you do a post-mortem. What things were good, what things were not so good. Okay. And in the future, you correct it as you go along. All right. So when we do online learning, it is exactly the same. It is exactly the same for there. All right. So we are going to start it off with the pre-delivery checklist. So the reason why I put it as a checklist is because it becomes much easier if it's just a tick box. These are the things that you should do when you are planning for online delivery. Now, many of these things here are very much based on feedback from you all. The colleagues are the one that gave me the feedback, and also based on self experience and also literature. Okay. So number one in the pre-delivery checklist is review lesson learning outcome. Okay. The first thing before you run your lesson, before you run your online class, is look into the lesson outcome, LLO. All right. So you have your CLO, course learning outcome. That is the whole course. One course got maybe 3 to 4 CLOs. But every lesson, you will have your own lesson learning outcome. So in today's lesson, 2 hours, what do you want to achieve? That is called the lesson learning outcome. Okay, it is not your course learning outcome, it's that lesson itself. So you need to understand what are you looking at over here. The lesson learning outcome will be reflected from the course syllabus. So are we looking at language? Are we looking at history? What part of it? So if it is history, maybe we are going to talk about Vietnam War. Vietnam War in Asia. That is one part. That is what you want to achieve. You want to educate the students about the impacts or about the historical lesson of the Vietnam War in Asia. Okay. So number 2, after you already know your lesson learning outcome, is what do you want to achieve? What are the skills domain to be achieved by students? So if this topic over here, this LLO is on the Vietnam War, all right, is it going to be analytical? Is it going to be psychomotor? Is it going to be presentation skill? Is it going to be group work, or so on? You see? So what do you want to achieve? So if you are a history lecturer and you are teaching about the Vietnam War, I don't think it is psychomotor law. It is not so much on psychomotor law. So basically you want knowledge. You want students to understand why it happened. So it could be more cognitive thinking. Now, why is it important? You need to know this part over here very clearly because it will determine your lesson, your online lesson. It will determine what kind of activities that you put into the lesson itself. You see, that is why it is important. Lesson learning outcome. Second thing is what kind of skills or domains to be achieved by the student. What do you want to do? All right. So if, for example, you are in the hospitality school and then you want students and the skill of domain is practical skill. Ayo, kepala sakit. How? It is online and it is practical skill. So you need to structure your online lesson in a way that will allow you to observe students' activity. Now, this can only work if part of the trifecta, you have the one at the bottom. What is it? Technology. You have the correct technology and the correct infrastructure, then you can do it. That is why it is very important for us to make sure that the trifecta is there. Do we have the correct technology to observe students in their environment? Now, is this the best method? Of course not. The best method is if you are there with the student. But in reality, many a times we don't get the best. We don't get the best. All right. So we have to make do or make best of what we have. All right. During the lockdown, when we do student observation, how do you do observation when you can't be with the student? So there must be a best method to reach that particular goal itself. Okay. So this is number 2. Understand? Now, number 3. Once you know your LLO, once you know what kind of domain you want to learn, is you divide the lesson into smaller packets. I like to use the word packets over there. All right. So it is like a pie over here. This is your 2-hour lesson and you divide them into 6 parts. All right. Evenly 6 parts. So for example, if this lesson I'm doing sponsoring an event, I used to teach events. So lesson sponsoring an event. So packet 1, packet 2, packet 3, in a normal physical environment, I will do this in maybe 1 hour or 2 hours lecture. But now it is online. So what do? I break it down into packet 1, packet 2, packet 3. Because the environment is different already. Okay, so packet 1 is this 2 lah. What is sponsorship, trends influencing trends of sponsorship, and packet 2 is this, and packet 3 is that. Okay, now Do you need to follow the sequence? No, it depends on you itself because you know better how you want to divide it into packets. Okay. Now, why do we do in packet? That is where the question arises. The reason is because in this environment of being online, the whole aspect of students' absorption and students' comprehension evolves. In the more physical sense, I can see students' feedback. I can get students' feedback. All right. In my class itself, when I do my lecture, I look at students' behavior, I look at students' body language, and I look at students, maybe they raise an answer, I don't understand, and this and that, and so on. So I get formative feedback. I get formative feedback and I can evaluate and I can rectify. In an online environment, it is a little bit different. Okay. Take, for example, today. All right. None of you all switch on your videos, which is fine. Okay. However, if with the video itself, if you have switched on your video, I can see facial expressions. And facial expressions give me a hint, not 100% accurate, but a hint on comprehension, whether we understand or not. So what I can do now is a little bit different there, you see, because of the environment itself. That is why when we do online delivery, we break it down into packets because we want to ensure comprehension at individual levels, individual levels itself. In the class, you see, different. But here, maybe online, we do individual, we break it down so that we can assess accordingly. Now, then you design activity for each packet. Remember, I broke it down into 3 packets, so we design activity for each of this packet. So basically, an example will be over here, packet 1, 30 minutes. What is sponsorship trends influencing the trends in sponsorship? So I would think, I want to educate my student about what is sponsorship. So what can I do? Maybe I will show a video, and after that, I will evaluate or I will speak through a lecture. All right. So I will show the video. I say, guys, look at sponsorship. Look at what Coca-Cola is doing. Look at what Hilton is doing. Look at what Toyota is doing. Look at the type of sponsorship that they get. Or look at what World Cup is doing. You know, the FIFA World Cup every 4 years. Most of their revenue comes from sponsorship. Look at what they do over there. Okay. Then we talk about it. Okay. So here it is good to use this thing called tell, show, do, apply technique. So what is this tell, show, do, apply? Is basically when you do activities for the students, the higher level you go from this tell, show, do, apply, the more the student will comprehend. Tell is just tell the students. Show is not only do you tell, but you show the students this is what it is. Do is where the students do it. Apply is where they do it itself. So the best example on tell, show, do, apply is basically origami. Say, if it is, let's say we are making a origami boat, and then I tell you, you all don't do anything, I just say, top right corner, fold down 45 degrees to the middle. Repeat on the left. Then take 30% of the paper from the top and fold it down half. So these are called instructions. So for you, the first thing you remember, top right corner, fold down 45. You can follow that. Then the second part, by the time the third instruction comes in, you already missed. Not so bad. At least you can get 1 or 2. Show is not only do I say, but I show it to you. Do is if when I show, you also do together. Top right down, then you also top right down. And then it goes on. And apply is after we do this, everything done already. Okay, you do it again. You do it again. So that tell, show, do, apply is a high level. All right. The apply is higher level of comprehension. Tell is only at the lower level. So when you design your packets, it is important for you to understand how much can we do over here? How much can we do? All right. The higher apply is even better. But is it feasible? Can we achieve that or not? Okay. So this is something that we need to consider. We need to consider the way that we deliver our session itself. Using technology will actually assist in this. I will speak about that later as we go along. So that is number 4. Number 5, ensure achievement of each packet before proceeding to the next packet. So if you saw, my lesson learning outcome got 3 packets. So I will do the first one, then I will need to ensure I achieve the goal of that packet before I go on to the next one. Okay, so as what I said earlier on, we lecturers or educators, we are like stand-up comedians. We thrive on instant feedback. All right, we want feedback. So feedback actually tells us whether the students comprehend. All right, so students are the moderators. Students are the one that will give you the feedback. Okay, so how do you know whether students have achieved that packet? So you need to do some sort of assessment. The word assessment here does not mean must got marks. It can be anything. A simplest form of assessment I can use now is, do you understand? Please show a thumbs up, click if you understand what I have said in the first half an hour. Okay, guys, I'm doing it now. Do you understand? If you have, yes, see? Julian puts yes, okay? So this is direct feedback. So based on Bridget, Fatiha, okay, so Hanaliza, okay, so I can see all the thumbs coming up. Now, simple statistics. I asked a question. There are 14 participants over here. I think let's say 14 participants, let's say. And only 4 gave their feedback. So in my mind, I do the simple math. 4 over 14 multiplied by 100. So we are looking at 28%. So comprehension at the moment is only 28% for my first packet. So what do I need to do? I need to make sure they understand. So I then follow up. So students, for those of you who still do not understand certain things, what are the key areas that you do not understand? Okay, then let's use the chat over there. Or you can use this. Kahoot, technology. You use technology. So in my class, when I run my class, online classes, what I do is every packet, I will have a simple Kahoot game. And that Kahoot will only question what I covered in the first packet. Okay? So if students understand, good, we go on to the next packet. If they don't, I reiterate to make sure that they understand. This is how it works. This is how it works. So packet 1 is achieved. Once packet 1 is achieved, we go on to packet 2. Okay, so number 6, after that, achieving LLO goals. LLO can be planned by duration. Example, a student may take a week to complete the LLO. This will comprise of 2 hours face-to-face online lessons and work given on the LMS. All right. So when we talk about achieving the lesson learning outcome online, an online lesson does not need to be a 2-hour equation of what you used to do on the physical class itself. It can be, when you talk about online learning, guys, it can be like this. Your lesson learning outcome is to explain what is sponsorship. You can give student work that they can need to complete in that 1 week. Self-learning. All right. But the goal of that lesson is to be achieved in 1 week. It does not need to be a 2-hour face-to-face lecture like what I'm doing now, virtually. It can be self-learning also. Okay. So there are many ways to it. Example, for some of you, you have gone into Coursera, MOOCs, and so on. So that is what it is. It gives you the flexibility to learn on your own pace. But at the end of the day, you achieve your goal. All right, your goals are achieved. So what it means over here is when you talk about online learning, we have to step back from the traditional sense of 2-hour lessons. But we need to look at it as what are the lesson learning outcomes. The lesson learning outcome to achieve is this. Okay, and you give students a duration of a week to achieve. A good student can achieve it in 1 hour. Good I want to rephrase that. May not be a good student. A hardworking student or a kanchong student can finish it in 1 hour. A student who has other commitments will still reach the goal of the lesson learning outcome, but this person may take 2 days. The person who complete in 1 hour or 2 days, they still achieve the goal. No problem. It doesn't mean the one achieved in 1 hour is a better student than the one that achieved in 2 days. No. They still achieve the goal because you have already set. This is the duration. You need to achieve your goal during this time. regardless of how you achieve it. Okay, why? Because all of us, all 14 of us plus me 15, we learn differently. Some students, you cakap satu kali, dia faham. Some students, you cakap 3 kali, baru dia faham. But they are also good students. They are also good because we are unique in our own self. Okay, so we learn differently. All right, so this is called achieving LLO goals. That is the beauty of online learning, or I would say blended or hybrid learning, that I very much feel that it is critical or important. Sometimes we have classes 8 in the morning. Some of our students are nocturnal. 8 in the morning, they cannot one. Their mind belum start lagi. At night, they are very fresh. They can do their work one. Okay, but we have 8 o'clock classes. They come, they give you stone face. Why? Last night, maybe they only went to bed at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and rushing them at 8 in the morning is that is how they are. All right. So this allows for the individual to, in a way, achieve their goals in the highest potential that is what they are. Okay. I, for example, am a morning person. I'm not a night person. I'm a morning person. I can do work 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning, no problem. I'm freshest then. My mind is fresh. After 3 o'clock, my mind shut down already. That is me. Am I a bad person? No. Does that make me better? No. But that is me lah. All right. So we are all different. All right. We are all unique. So that is where adapting to this learning context gives students the opportunity to excel in their own pace. Okay. 7, understand the level of your audience. You must always understand the level of your audience. All right. Asynchronous and synchronous. Okay. Synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. Asynchronous learning is where students learn on their own. Synchronous learning is, this is what we are doing. We're doing synchronous at the moment. We are doing a virtual online synchronous lesson. Okay, so it allows sometimes certain students at higher levels, maybe asynchronous is good for them. They learn on their own pace. Then they have opportunity to ask. At lower level, okay, so basically in our MQF, Malaysian Qualifications Framework, we have tahap 1 sampai tahap 8. Tahap 8 is PhD, tahap 1 is certificate. The lower level you are, the more synchronous learning should be. Should be, doesn't mean must be. Certificate, diploma year 1, there should be more contact. But when you go higher on the scale, it's supposed to mean that the students either have the correct prerequisites or knowledge or experience or comprehension or ability. So that will allow for more asynchronous kind of learning. Okay, that is how it is. That is why if you're looking at contact hours, you may think, hey guys, a certificate class, now we all do on an average 14 hours is 1 credit. Let's say in a traditional LAN sense, 14 contact hours is 1 credit hour. But if it is certificate level, you may need to give more than 14 contact hours for 1 credit, because maybe their level is a little bit lower. They require more repetition, more contact. At higher level, let's say you're talking about a master's class. Tahap 7, guys, tahap 7. The subject is 4 credits. You may have contact hours only 20 for that 4 credits. Why? Because that level is different really. Students at that level are supposed to be self-motivated, self-driven, achieving their own goals. Okay, so when you talk about online delivery, you need to consider synchronous, asynchronous, how much time it is. For those of you who teach level 7 master students, no need to do continuous face-to-face classes one. No need one. All right, let them do work on their own. And during the classes, during the workshops, is only on discussion, evaluation and discussion, where they apply their knowledge. Application of knowledge is where it is critical. Okay, so this is called understanding the level of your audience on whether you choose synchronous versus asynchronous. Now, then pace yourself. All right. We normally do 2-hour lessons in our class, but online you may not want to do that. It is challenging. Okay, so you may want to pace maybe an hour, then a break, and so on. And plan to use as many sensors as possible because it is online. Now, I think we all know these 5 sensors. Some of you may say that you may have 6 because you can see the spiritual world or you know, not likely. Okay, anyway, basically, the more sensors you use, the higher chance the students of comprehending what you are saying. All right, it's like I normally tell my students and my colleagues, you want to explain what a garlic is to your student, it is difficult. All right, you want to because you want to explain the taste or the smell or what it is. Even the description of how it looks like is not easy. So it is important, maybe you have the actual product itself. You want to explain taste, crush it, put it in your mouth, and then you know what garlic tastes like. That is at a much higher level compared to just looking at that product or just looking at the picture itself. So in many sense, when you do online lessons, like what I'm doing, you see I'm very animated because I'm trying to use at least sight and hearing. Okay. At the current states, I'm only using 2. Touch, smell, and taste, not at the moment lah. Okay, not at the moment. But the higher the level of senses that you use, the higher the level of learning that the students can get. Okay. And then number 10, understand and select the right tools for your audience. You look at your audience, what kind of tools do they have? Okay, where this is what we say, if we are having classes, virtual classes, you need to understand, are your students just using mobile phones? Are they using laptops? Do they have enough bandwidth? Because if you're going to continuously stream videos, then how? Is there enough bandwidth? I still remember when MCO started, many of our students were using prepaid plans. Okay, prepaid plans. And many of them only had maybe a gig. After 3 days of classes, no more data. Then they needed to upload their data. They needed to top up their data. So this can be a hindrance to learning itself. So we need to understand our audience. Today is different. Today, our telcos are giving a lot of unlimited packages and whatnot. And prices have become much more competitive due to what we have actually experienced. Okay. And then housekeeping, check your tools. Make sure you have the right updates. When you do online lessons, your firmware, your updates, and so on. Make sure everything is there. Okay. And then check your environment also. Your environment that you are in. You have to ensure that the environment that you're in is also conducive when you do online learning. Okay. Like for me, currently in my office, it's very conducive. It's quiet. Aircon works. There are no distractions. Okay, so this is very important because when you run your classes, it is important for us to know that our surrounding and where we are will have an impact on the way that we deliver, especially this. I want to highlight on this temperature, hot. Okay, during the MCO time, I remember some of our colleagues say, "Oh, Gabe, I'm having this place on my own. My aircon is down. I'm doing a 2 hours class and there's no aircon." Pitiful. Seriously, the colleague, you can see the lecturer, number 1, already difficult because using a new system. All right, teaching online, and it was hot. They did not, the aircon was not working well. So it was very, very bad. I remembered having a meeting with some of our colleagues, some of your friends, where the colleague actually did the meeting in the car. Why? Start the car. Also, they needed to start the engine on the aircon and use the computer in the car because got aircon. So this is what it is. This is called housekeeping. Check your environment on temperature. Okay, and so on. And number 13, the final one, relax. It is not easy. Doing online is not easy. Anything that can happen will happen. It's very unpredictable. The challenges that arise when you do online lessons, you will just never know. All right. But what is important is we need to be spontaneous. We need to relax. We need to understand. And we need to always have a plan B. All right. A plan B is very important, just in case something goes off. All right. Just in case something goes off. That is why having contact, example, with your students using WhatsApp is important. Let's say internet goes off. Yes, most of the students, I'm sorry, internet is down. It is not you, it is me. Let's take a 10-minute break and we will come back again, or something like that. Okay, so this is, we have to understand that using technology, sometimes it is pretty unpredictable. All right. All right, good. So we reached, that is the first stage. That is the pre, that's the checklist itself. Later, we are going to go to the during and the post. So now I would like to give you all a 10-minute break. Come back a little bit more than 10 minutes at 10 a.m. sharp. Okay, at 10 a.m. we will start. So now it's 9:48. So I'm giving you 12 minutes. All right, guys, take a short break. Okay. Hi guys, sorry for that. Had a call that needed to be attended to. Sometimes it happens lah. Okay, let's continue. So on the next part over here, what we are going to look at will be on during the lesson. All right. So now it is during the lesson itself. Okay. So basically over here, I actually use or refer to Robert Gagne's 9 level of learning. I find that is actually one very important theory or concept on lesson delivery that is widely or universally used as the standard of delivery itself. All right. So basically, when what I'm going to do now is I'm going to explain basically what our key context over there in reference to Gagne's 9 level. Okay. So the first thing is start with an enthusiastic greet to students. So enthusiasm. So we should show our enthusiasm to the students itself, so that it comes out with a good start to our lesson. Okay, in our online lesson and so on. Okay, if you look at what Gagne says is reception. The reception is important, which is gaining attention. All right, how we want to gain the attention. So this is very similar to what we should do. Okay, gain attention of the students. Number 2, highlight lesson learning outcome. It is important for us to inform our students that what they are supposed to achieve today, because this is actually the goalpost. This is what they need to achieve. This is what they need to do for this year itself. Okay, for this particular lesson itself, for this particular lesson itself. So what is this is basically called expectancy. Students will expect something. This is what they will expect. Okay, so under Gagne, it is level 2, same thing, inform learners of the objective. So when I did my over there, highlight LLOs, then when I refer to Gagne's, it's actually very similar over there. Number 3, recap previous lesson. Okay, after you put your LLO, your lesson learning outcome, it is important for us to recap. Students, last week, this is what we did. Previous lesson, this is what we did, and so on. State the key points of the previous lesson, review on questions, assignments given. So you state, in our previous lesson, this is what we did. So for today, this is our lesson learning outcome. This is called linking. So we want to link what the students have learned before to what they are learning today, because every lesson basically is continuous. There is continuity. Okay, so under Gagne, it is called retrieval, stimulating recall of prior learning. So they want to retrieve in the way that they are stimulating the recall. Oh yes, last lesson we learned that, and how last lesson will link to today's lesson. So that is number 3. Number 4, suggested for those who are new to online teaching. Now, this is something I put in, which is Gagne's one is not there, because Gagne's one is generally on delivery, whereas this is on online delivery. I would suggest for those of you who are new, all right, to have a colleague to observe the lecture and give immediate feedback. Okay, it is okay to invite one of your colleagues or one of your friends to sit in with the lesson, because the person will then be the sounding board. Okay, sometimes the video or audio becomes choppy, or the lecture is too fast and so on. So at least the colleague can tell, hey, I can't hear you. Because a lot of times students won't give you feedback one. Students will just be there, and then sometimes after 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, then the students say, sir, actually we couldn't hear you. Actually, we couldn't hear you. Actually, we couldn't see you. Actually, we didn't know what you were talking about, but you already completed 10, 15, 20 minutes of your lesson already. Okay, so it is good to have a colleague in there just to ensure all of these things are smooth and done properly. Okay, then number 5, present in an effective manner, pacing, and get feedback after each lesson packet is completed. So present it in an effective manner, pace it to ensure that students understand. All right. So when we look into this context over here, how do we get feedback from the student? Maybe it's not so advisable just to ask, do you understand? But it is more focused. John, can you explain, or something like that? All right. Or we use technology to get feedback Okay, so you get feedback on the points that you actually covered immediately. So this is called presenting the stimulus, selective perception. The reason is because we want to ensure that students understand what you have already just covered. Okay, so number 6, use examples, case studies, graphic storytelling, and analogies. All right, use examples that will easily link the students' flow of thought to the lesson itself. So if you are teaching about sponsorship, and then you know this group of students are very much into football, so you may want to use the example of the World Cup. This is what it means. So this is by linking it in that way, you actually ensure that the students comprehend the whole process itself. Because students always relate concept theories to things that they feel comfortable with. So if they're comfortable with sports, so they understand, oh yes, look at the World Cup, there's so many sponsors over there. Why do we have so many sponsors? Why is this done? And so on and whatnot. Okay. So this is called using examples. Okay, so in Gagne's theory is basically providing learning guidance, semantic encoding. So this is called providing learning guidance is where you relate it with examples. All right, examples that students can relate their whole understanding. Okay, number 7. Oh, that's number 7 over there. Face-to-face delivery is critical. Lecturer must have their video shown. Yes. Okay. Now, this is something that is important. When we as educators, we have our virtual classes, it is important to have our videos shown. There were cases where sometimes the lecturers even run it without their video. The reason why that is not advisable is because students receive stimuli and stimuli, and one key aspect is the visual aspect, where they actually look at you, they see body language, they see mannerisms, and from there they will put emphasis on what is important. Okay, because the way that we explain and the way that our body language in a way relates to the general concepts or ideas itself will be shown not only in what we say, but in the way that our head moves or our eye moves or our hand moves, and students will have cues. So if I say, students, this is important, this is important, so they see the hand, they say, oh, this one important. They may write in the note there, put a star. Okay, this is important. Okay. 7, formative feedback. All right. So under Gagne's concept, it is level 6 and 7, eliciting performance, getting response from the students, and also providing feedback, reinforcement. So what we do is called formative feedback. We evaluate the students. We evaluate by using Quizlet, Kahoot, Poll, Everywhere, or so on. This example. And then once we get the feedback, automatically what we do is once we get their performance level, we know what they understand, then we give our feedback. Our feedback can be reinforcement. All right, students, well done. You know this well. Or you can say, this part here, you guys are still not very clear. I would need to further emphasize on this, that, and so on. You see? So this is where it comes in. Okay? This is where a critical part that will further solidify students' understanding. All right? The performance part and the reinforcement. Okay? Then number 8, close the loop. It is always important. I always say this. We have to close the loop. We always close the loop. Review lessons of the day and emphasize on the must-knows. Okay. Now, so we need to review. Okay, students, at the end of today, we have already completed our lesson. This is what you have learned, and these are the critical part, the must-knows. Now, what are these things called must-know? Must-know are the key points that normally in your lesson, your 2-hour lesson, for example, there are only maybe 3 or 4 key points that is critical. A lot of them are called fillers. What are fillers? Fillers are things that you put in so that students understand. Those are called fillers. And this is normal and is very effective for teaching. You must have fillers over there. So what happens is these must-knows over there, you will emphasize, you close the loop. You close the loop. Students, this is the important thing. So today, this is what we learn. Okay, so you make sure that in the first part, you explain what are the LLOs, the lesson. In today's lesson, this is what we're going to learn. The students learn, then you close the loop. This is what you have learned. Okay, This is called assessing performance retrieval. So students can retrieve back what the whole lesson was. Because normally students will only absorb the last part of the lesson. Then once they absorb the last part of the lesson, then they will refer. But then the lecturer was talking about World Cup. The lecturer was talking about Premiership football and this and that. So when they relate to the key concept over there, this is where learning takes place and understanding of the concept. Okay, that's understanding. But what initiates that learning? It is the final part, the summary. That one is important. Okay, so that is the final aspect. So then it's also important for you to introduce to them what will be taught in the next lesson. This is like a post scene in an Avengers movie. All right. Sometimes you have like trailers and a post scene. The reason is because it creates anticipation. When you watch a trailer, for example, a movie trailer, it is only 2 minutes, 1 minute and a half, or maybe 2 minutes, but it tells you the gist or the important parts of the full 2-hour or 3-hour movie. Okay, 2 to 3 hour movie. So what happens over here is when we after closing the loop, you tell students in the next lesson. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to create that excitement in the student so that this is called wanting something, or in a way in anticipation. So they will anticipate this lesson, the following lesson. And if you link it all together, see, this lesson we talked about sponsorship. Next lesson we talk about merchandising or something like that, and how it links to each other. Then students can understand that all the lessons are actually linked. Because they are linked, the understanding becomes more fluid. Okay, fluid understanding over there. Okay. So create an environment where students will be able to keep in contact with you. All right. We create an environment that students can keep in contact with you. So maybe it is email and so on. So this is something very important. When you do online lessons, when you do online teaching, it is important that the students understand. If I don't understand, if I have a problem, I know who to contact. So that is where it becomes important. That where it becomes good. Okay. Now, then enhancing under Gagne, number 9 over there. Gagne summarizes it. Enhancing retention and transfer generalization over here is repetition. So you want to enhance retention. You want to enhance your retention and you transfer. So students will do, tell, show, do. This is what earlier on I explained. So just picture this, students learn the whole lesson already. So under this part, retention and transfer is maybe they write their own notes, they can answer questions and so on. Okay, the reason why this is separate a little bit is because this is not during the class. It could be done after the class. So you tell students, okay, students, today's lesson, we have covered this and that. Very good. Now, I want all of you to write a 500-word reflection or an essay on something, something, something. All right, write that 500-word essay, submit to me on your understanding of, or submit to me a 500-word essay on the relation of sponsorship towards Malaysia's sports tourism or something like that. So they use their theory, they use the theory of sponsorship, and they implement it into Malaysian sports tourism. So how does it work? How does it work? Okay. So this is getting students to transfer their knowledge. This is where transferring takes place. Transferring concept into application, concept into application. So this is the whole process of during the lesson. So during the lesson itself, it goes through certain, in a way, paths, all right, different sections and different modes over there. And by ensuring that these are covered in a proper manner, we can, in a way, not guarantee, but there's a higher chance of students retaining knowledge. Okay, students retaining knowledge. One key aspect over here on why level 9 here is the most critical part is because of outcomes-based education, OBE. Outcomes-based education emphasizes on the application of things, not so much on the attainment. Attainment is where students learn. Okay, I learn. Okay, I get sponge. Application is using that knowledge into actual context. So in OBE, it is very much the application of it. How do we use this in a particular situation? How do we use this in a particular learning? I want to use the word learning because students will need to relate it to their learning itself, and they're able to demonstrate that learning to us. That is what this is what the level 9 is lah. All right, transferring of that knowledge itself. Okay. So that is during delivery. All right, guys, that's during delivery. And then after that, we have we prepare. During delivery, we have that 9 stages over there reflected by Gagney's key concepts. And now what about post-delivery? Once lessons are done, class finished already, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? We still got things to do. Number 1 and number 2, very simple. 1, reflect on the effective versus non-effective methods. This could be class specific, change if not effective, improve if it currently works. Whatever you do in class A may not work in class B. Okay, so it is important for us to reflect what is effective and what is not effective in that particular class. All right, and it is also important for us to change, accept that in certain classes, you no need to teach. They learn on their own because they're very good students. But in certain classes, you must continuously have lecture because that is how they are. But you want to wean them off from lectures. All right, slowly wean them off. All right, so what are the processes that you actually do? So this is called reflection. You reflect on your own learning. You reflect on your own learning. Number 2, review on the less involved students. All right, it could be due to lack of conducive technology available to them. Now, this is also important. When you do a review, when you review students itself, okay, in a classroom environment where majority of the thing is equal to all, student A, student B in your classroom, they are in a similar environment, physical environment, mental state. We don't know lah. One maybe just broke off with their partner. The other one is very happy. So the mental state is different. But in that physical environment, in technology wise, they are the same. You project your slides on the board, all the students can see. The aircon is similar to all. Everything is similar. Okay. Now, in an online environment, it is a little bit different because not only do they have different mental readiness, but the whole technological aspect, which something that we neglect or we take for granted in class, differs. When you have 50 students, it's like having 50 different classrooms, different temperature, different internet speed, everything different. Everything total different. Different, what do you call that? Distractions. Certain students, they are blessed with their own room. Certain students, in that one room, they have 2 other siblings next to them who are also learning. Okay, so this is important. Review on the less involved students. Some students are less involved. Why? Could it be because of they are not having conducive technology? The technology is not there for them, or the technology doesn't encourage them to learn, okay? Or maybe their general environment. I use the word technology in a very loose term, but it could be in that general environment. So if that general environment doesn't allow them, we may need to use different methods or strategies to ensure that they are able to absorb and get this. Okay. Okay. So that is basically on the pre, during, and post delivery. Certain guidelines that as you review as you review these basic notes over there, it will give you a better idea and understanding of how maybe you can tweak your lessons to maybe absorb a few key aspects or principles over here that will make you more effective. Okay. If most of the things you guys are doing already, I can assure you, if you look at Gagney's 9, most of you would easily be practicing at least 5 to 6, but in a subconscious manner. That means you do not know that, oh, this is actually what is supposed to be done. Now, when you have this 9 over there, you can see, I'm doing this very well. Maybe I can add in another 2 more. So with your 6, you become 8. Okay, or maybe with your 5, it becomes 7. So it improves the way that you deliver your lesson itself. All right, guys, Ken? Okay. So far, good? All right. Good. Now, Then I'm going to start now a little on the online assessment. What are the key best practices on online assessments? So when we go on a blended environment in what it is, I know currently everything is back physical. So even exams like this week, it is still exams. Last week started, this week's are still exams. Our students are having their examination. It is very much in a physical environment. However, as I stressed earlier on, market's changing. Some of your students may not be able to come physically for their assessments also. So if we are then required to do online assessments, what are the key things that we should consider? Now, it is important for us to remember that students' assessment should be consistent with the program goals and the intended learning outcomes. So whatever assessment that you do, you must always go back to the PLO, which you must always go back to the CLO, which is driven by the PLO. Okay, so it's based on your course learning outcome. So where do we get all of this thing? Basically, if you look at your assessment sheet, it is quite stated in the way that it is already in your table 4. Okay, so assessments validate students' achievement of their CLO. So if students say that this is an A student, it means that the students have achieved their CLOs. You see, and their course learning outcome, that's why they are A. So if students don't achieve their CLOs, they should not be A. They, or they don't achieve fully, or they don't excel in their CLOs, they may be a C or a C plus kind of students and so on. A stringent process of selecting and validating the proper assessment method needs to be available and implemented. So the assessment method is critical because the assessment method is the stage where that is the tool that is being used to ensure that the students achieve or are evaluated that they have achieved that particular course learning outcome of as what is required in their particular course itself. Okay. So steps for assessment design. So how do you do assessment over there? I think the first thing we need to understand is what do we do? How do we do it? So number one, define results to be measured. What do you want to measure? Okay, so you want to measure comprehension. What do you want to measure itself? Okay, so there are many ways because when you look into assessment, there are many types. It could be a presentation, it could be a written essay, it could be an examination. So if you want to assess students' ability to speak in public, students' ability to speak in public, then written tests will not work. Okay, so your measurement, what you want to measure is ability to speak. Written test definitely cannot. So if you use a written test or an essay to evaluate students' ability to speak in public, you're using the wrong tool. You're using a mouse to hammer in a nail. Okay, so you're using a mouse to hammer in a nail. It just doesn't work. All right. Okay, the nail can budge a little bit, but eventually the mouse will be destroyed. Okay, so that is very important. That is step one. Step two, identify data required and source. What data do you need when you want to evaluate students' ability to speak? Okay, to do presentation, public speaking, what data? Okay, so it's basically a specific set of criteria that will determine whether the particular student is able to achieve that goal. 3, review existing assessment methods. What are the existing assessment methods that are available? If you are already having this course before and you see, and the assessment method is students will need to do a 15-minute presentation. So you're reviewing, this is the existing methods. Okay, is it good? If it is good, maintain, don't change. If you see there's no good, step 4, define additional methods and measures. If it has evolved, okay, example, 20 years ago, students' ability to speak in public is very much stand in front of the classroom. Today is different. Today, not only do they need to stand in front of the classroom, they need also to be recorded because speaking in public would also mean podcasting, for example. So if you are to be video recorded for the podcast, then maybe the methods that you learn, the skills will need to evolve a little bit. The words used, the speed that it goes, certain things that can be effective face-to-face may not be effective if it is a podcast. That is what it is, additional methods. Okay, because changing market environments. Then implement and evaluate. You implement what is being change. If there's any changes, then you evaluate, is it good? If it is good, continue. If it is not good, continuous improvement, you change. This is how assessment should be. Assessment do not, at a particular assessment, do not stick or stay dormant or doesn't change forever. It evolves. It evolves based on what is expected. It evolves based on the lesson learning outcome. It evolves based on the course learning outcome. So this is steps for assessment design. So currently, where do we get? Now, this is a simple one that was extracted from table 4. So this is assessment method lah. Can we change this? Yes, we can change this. We can change. You do program review, you do course review, you do curriculum review. During the curriculum review, you will look and you will evaluate accordingly. Okay. Then flow of assessment plan to find evidence and performance standard of LO attainment. So this is basically the flow. Okay, so I even put certain examples how it is to be done. Set learning outcome of the unit. What is the learning outcome? So example, communication skill. Design assessment tasks based on learning outcome, individual presentation. Create specific assessment criteria. Okay, what are the criteria when you're looking at individual presentation? Intro, timing, clarity, etc. Then develop performance standard for each criteria. What are the performance standards? What is a good intro? What does good timing mean? What is good clarity mean? So rubric. So example, you must have a good rubric. Okay, a rubric will actually break down what does a good intro mean, good, average, poor, and so on. Then finally, it will come up with the construct overall achievement standards to arrive at the grade for the assessment task. By doing all of this, you will come up with a grade. So what is a grade? A grade becomes a very tangible comparison between individuals who are doing or who are being evaluated on the same scale. That is what a grade is. The scale must be the same. All students must have the same assessment and they must be evaluated fairly. So a grade differentiates the participant based on that same scale. All right. An A student, a B, a C, a 98 student, a 64 student, a 50 student, and a failed student. Okay. So if a 60 student with 60 marks and a student with 90 marks, in your mind, it's actually they are the same. They're actually very good. No, both of them in class are very participative, both can answer. But then at the end of the day, one is 60, one is 90. Then something could be wrong lah. Something could be wrong with the mechanism or the tool that we're using to evaluate. Or something must be wrong in the way that we get feedback in class. Why do we say the students are good? Well, at the end of the day, one is 90, one is 60. Or because in class, the student managed to answer, they managed to talk. This student very active, can talk. Good student. Good student can talk doesn't mean intelligent or meets the standard of the program, of the course. Okay, so this is what it means over there when we allocate a grade, okay, a mark or a grade to a particular student. It means on everything that is similar, this is where the student stands. Okay. Purpose. Assessment tasks and processes fulfill 3 key roles in students' learning. All right, an assessment, 3 key roles over there. Number 1, facilitate students' capacity to meet learning outcomes. It facilitates students' capacity. So when we do assessment, especially formative assessment, then it helps students to achieve the goal. Okay, formative assessment is any assessment that will assist students to achieve their goal. That is formative. No marks. If I ask you all, do you understand? You say yes. That is formative assessment. You get no marks, but I'm assessing you and you're giving me formative feedback. Okay, let's say I'm assessing you by saying, students, do you understand? I'm giving you okay, what do you think of? And you answer, the answer is wrong. So that is formative. Students' comprehension is low, so I better repeat certain things. So number 1, that's the purpose. Facilitate students' capacity to meet learning outcomes. 2, develop students' ability to become confident self-evaluators. The thing about assessment is this, the assessment creates self-confidence in the student. if students are assessed properly and assessed with in a way effectively, then they will know whether they are at a particular level or not. Okay, so if it is formative assessment in class, simple asking question, students will understand, hey, actually, I'm not that very good now. I need to pay more attention. Or if it's in the other way, they will find that, hey, actually, I know this topic very well already. I'm actually pretty good in this topic. Confidence. Confidence breeds confidence. All right. Success breeds success. Okay. So this is what it means. Okay. Develop students' ability to become confident self-evaluators. Okay. And provide evidence of achievement of learning outcomes. So that is summative. Summative assessment provides evidence of achievement. Summative are any kinds of assessment that contributes to the final mark. That is summative. Okay, the final grade itself, your final exam, your continuous assessment, anything that got marks that will impact the student is called summative. Anything that encourages students to achieve their goal, no marks, is called formative. Okay, so that's where formative and summative, and both of them work hand in hand for students to achieve their goal. Okay, so when you look into assessment itself, it's the other way around. When we talk about curriculum design, it is this way: PEO, PLO, CLO, and LLO. When we talk about assessment, it is LLO. It is from the bottom. So when you achieve your LLO, you achieve your CLO, you achieve your PLO, and finally PLO, and then you finally achieve your PEO. Okay, so assessment is bottom up. Assessment is bottom up at that level itself. So once it is done, it is justified, then eventually students are then deemed to achieve the CLO, PLO, and PEOs. Okay, understand guys so far about the general aspects of assessment, why is it important, and why assessments is something which is not fixed. Now, the reason why I want to stress on this is because every year, you all do your curriculum review. All right, you all do it now. Please look at it in a way that you can make a difference. You can make a difference. All right. So if you find your assessment, hey, this one is irrelevant, this one doesn't work anymore, you can change, you can recommend, and so on. That is why all of this curriculum review is done in a committee. It is not done by an individual. No one person should have total authority on what assessment should be. All right. It should be a committee because of discipline. All right. My discipline is different from your discipline and so on. So we actually look into it. Now, these are all also driven by advisory board, IAP. IAP plays a very critical role in this because your industry advisory panel, you know, those external people who are working in the industry, you have meetings with them, they will tell you, you know, what is needed in the student. They tell you, hey guys, students today in the future or so on, this is what they need. So you should evaluate them. These are the CLOs. This is what are the things that they need in their program. Because they need these kind of things, you need to think. The assessment method also need to change. Okay. So formative assessment and summative assessment, as what I stressed earlier on, this is just to touch on a little bit. To improve learning formative, to grade student is summative. All right. So formative assessment is a form of low-stakes assessment for learning and is part of the instruction process. All right. So when we talk about formative, it's continuously collecting data as learning is a progress, provide information needed to adjust teaching and learning while that is happening. So based on the assessment and the feedback that you get, you adjust your way that you deliver so that students can understand you better. All right. I may be teaching marketing for 3 classes. Same course syllabus, same CLO, everything the same. But because it is 3 classes, 3 different levels, 3 different kinds of students, due to the formative feedback that I get, I will deliver differently. Class A can be very slow, so I do a lot of lectures and one-to-one sessions. Class 3 can be very fast. I will use videos to achieve the same goal. I say, guys, I want you to do this reading at home first. Read already. Tomorrow we come in, we're going to watch this 20-minute video on something similar. Then we are going to discuss. All right, we're going to discuss. So different based on the feedback that we get from the students. All right, then you deliver differently. The reason is because if you maintain the same lecture, if I use method 1 for class 3 lecture, only class 3 students will get bored. If I use method 3 for class 1 students will suffer because they may not have the ability to adapt to that method of learning. Okay. So it can be example, progress test exercise, body language, questioning, homework. All of these are formative. So many things. I like this part, body language. You see students slouching, you see students' eyes open up, you see students enthusiastically looking at you, nodding their heads. These are all very positive feedback that you get. These are formative, very formative. Summative is high stakes. Summative is high stakes. So this can be examinations to measure student success. So this is very straightforward because most of you all would use summative assessment also. Definitely one. All of your courses got, all right, exam, graded assignment, graded projects, FYP, the FYP report, the dissertation, the Viva defense, defense, Viva defense, okay? All of these are summative. It impacts the final grade, or impacts the final grade that you are being evaluated on, okay? So formative is constant, summative is impacts the final grade, okay? Must work hand in hand. These two must work hand in hand, okay? Because if you are doing formative in class, and you find that the grades are already very low, you can already know your summative is going to be low also. Okay? Because if students don't comprehend your weekly lessons, they won't comprehend the final exam. So modes of assessment, methods will vary depending on the learning outcomes to be measured. What do you want to measure? Direct assessment involves examination, actual examples of students' work, exams, quizzes, portfolios, and so on. So we have direct assessment, and we also have indirect assessment. Now you may ask, yeah, got such thing as indirect? Got. Example over here, analysis of reported perceptions about students' mastery of learning outcomes. All right. Employer surveys, exit interviews, and so on. So when your student go for industrial placement, okay, industrial placement, that is an indirect assessment. Is the employer assessing the student? Oh, this student is good, basically based on what? It is not so much on actual students do get marks, but it is the assessment on the students itself. So we have that, but most of us in class, we will do direct assessments, okay, quizzes, reports, and so on. Okay. Assessment methods chosen must be aligned with the process of finding evidence of the LO attainment. So when you choose your assessment method, basically what you are doing is you are choosing the right tool to ensure that or to evaluate the that particular learning outcome. You're choosing the right tool to evaluate the correct learning outcome. Okay, so if CLO is something to do with students' ability to speak in public, the CLO one, ability to speak in public, then your assessment is the tool should be the correct one to assess that. Simple as that. Okay, you cannot put speak in public, able to write a good essay, and so on, so on. Those are your CLOs, able to express in a written manner, able to express in a verbal manner, and all your assessment, final exam. Cannot. It's the wrong assessment method. Okay. So assessment planning, basically, this is some guides over here. So you plan assessment tasks. Okay. Communicate the assessment plan to students. Students need to know. Planning the assessment. Okay. Here, when you plan your assessment, refer to assessment versus students' learning time. Don't give them a 5,000 word essay and due in 24 hours. Depending on what level. Okay, certain levels may be possible. If you're giving a diploma student, maybe not. And then you can be quite assured that they're going to use ChatGPT. All right. Diversity of assessment, different kind of assessment, not just one kind. Weightage on assessment, and also coverage. So that is on the planning. Okay. Then you conduct both formative and summative assessments. Then you have the different types of assessments, coursework, examination, and tests. And finally, you look into review of assessment methodologies and currency with development in best practices. So basically, you want to look into your currency, how current or relevant is your particular assessment. So here we look into validity and the reliability of your assessment itself. No point continuously using an assessment method that is not valid nor is it reliable. Then you will cry. Okay, then you will cry. Okay. So all assessments must be fair, valid, and reliable. All assessments that you do. Fair is about ensuring the assessment is accessible to students. Whatever assessment you do, if it's an online assessment, make sure every student will be able to do it. Don't do one particular assessment that only requires students to have an Apple computer. If you don't have an Apple computer, you cannot do this assessment. Not fair. Unless your program or your course says that before the student join, you must have an Apple computer. But if it is not, you cannot. So that's fairness. 2, validity is concerned with whether an assessment measure what it claims. If you are doing an assessment on verbal communication, then the method must be valid. A written exam is not valid for verbal communication. And reliability refers to an assessment being consistent over time and across assessors. It needs to be reliable. So if there are 3 students of the same level and same ability, and you give the same assessment to them, all of them should be the same marks, plus minus maybe 3%, 3 to 5%. Same ability. It cannot be you give the same assessment, one student 92, the other one 28, another one 60. Something is wrong. It's not reliable. That means your tool is not reliable. Why is your tool not reliable? If it is a presentation, sometimes it could be your rubrics is not reliable. You need to ensure that your rubrics used is accurate. Okay, the rubrics is your map. Okay, how do you do it itself? It needs to be accurate. Okay, so that is reliability. So when we talk about assessment, fairness, validity, and reliability will be critical, right? So I tell you what, take another break. It's 10:48, 10:47. Be back by 11. Take a short break. Okay, and then we will continue. All right, guys? Okay, go. Hello. Hi all. Hey, to hi, yes. Let's continue. So previously we were just we covered on fairness, validity, and reliability. So the next thing we're going to look at is the level and types of questions. So when you look into questioning itself, it is important for us to understand what are the levels and types of questions that are available, okay, or in the way that it's been structured. Now, so here we normally look at the lower level and the higher level aspects of questioning. Okay, in our context over here, we normally use the Bloom's taxonomy lah. All right. So Benjamin Bloom's taxonomy actually explains to us what are the different levels of questioning that we're looking at, from knowledge, understanding, apply, all the way to synthesize. Okay, but generally, if you want to divide it, lower level will be things such as remember, understand, okay, and to a certain extent apply is in the middle. Then when you look at higher level is to analyze, evaluate, and to create. If you're able to create something, that is regarded as a very high level of application of knowledge itself. Okay, so it is important for us to also understand what level the students are in. Certain levels will require students to do more on the understand and the remember, because you need to have a strong foundation. Having a strong foundation will be the basis to channel you to be able to evaluate and create in the future. Okay. So other things you need to look at is a closed question is one for which there are limited number of the type of questions, whether it can be closed or whether it can be open. So when we set exam questions, it is also important for us to consider what kind of scope or level that we are looking at. Closed question for a lower level will be like, what are the stages of cell division? All right. For higher level, given the medical data before you, could you say this patient is intoxicated or suffering from a diabetic reaction? All right, so that is very close. It's a kind of yes or no, and then the answers are very quite limited. Whereas if it is open, what is an example of an adjective? There are so many, so they need to actually choose. Okay, so a higher level, what are some ways we might solve the energy crisis? Okay, so when we also set our questions over there, we need to consider, do we expect students to give a very scope of answers? If there is so much over there, they can plug anything, put it in, it's going to be correct already. Or what are we looking at over there? Okay, so if you're looking at open, so it could be maybe selecting one solution or a array of solutions to solve particular issues or situations. All right. So now this is something that when we set exam questions, it is important for us to also comprehend and understand what is required from the students itself and at what level they are in. Okay. I give you one example. Just quite recently, we had a group of foreign students over here for a very short duration where they are here. They are actually postgraduate students, international students come over here, and then business school actually hosted them to do strategic marketing and business. All right. So they come here for only 3 to 4 hours. So depending on the clientele, this group was supposed to be a very high level group of students who are very intelligent. So the agent actually told us, this group, you no need to even explain, no need to elaborate on key concepts and theories. They already know. You just ask them to apply. You need straight away apply all of these things. You're talking about Porter's 5 forces, this and that. You just have to say, using Porter's 5 forces, do that. In reference to the second force in Porter's 5 forces, you do that immediately. So all those things you don't need. Why? Because of the group of students itself. Whereas there are some certain other groups of students may require more elaboration and explanation on the key concepts before those things can actually be done. So when we set exam questions, it's also important for us to understand. Okay, I find too open a question can also be difficult for us to evaluate, because in today's environment, it's very difficult for us to say whether is that answer truly wrong. Okay, or is it what is it? What are we looking at? Are we looking at the ability of the student to elaborate in their own way that sometimes students are able to make sense out of their own during in their explanation itself. So it is important for us to be cautious on how we set our questions. Okay. So like for us over here, lucky in a sense, but certain literature will say that this can be quite restrictive. We have what you call the blueprint, an exam blueprint over here that clearly explains if you are at certificate level. So at the lower level, you are looking at 60 to 80% of your questions should be knowledge and understanding. All right, 60 to 80%. And then here will be generally 20 to 40%. We are looking at apply and analysis. And finally, the high one, the synthesizing part, if possible, 0 to 5%. Not saying certificate level should not do that. No, they can, but the requirements are much lower over there. All right. Now, so if you look at it, majority of the bulk itself falls in the medium category over here, majority. All right. So the general graph slopes. Okay. Now, when we talk about online assessment, then this is something which was developed with the business school. So the business school School of Business is the one that actually championed the initial draft of this particular online assessment rubric, which I find it good. Now, the reason why when it's online assessment, the reward for lower level is much lower compared to this is because when you talk about online assessment, there is a high chance that there can be leakage in students' way that they do their exam. All right. Yes, they may be doing the exam or assessment at home. However, they could use technology in many different ways to bypass security features. And because of that, we do not want to reward knowledge and comprehension. We don't want to reward that much. You can reward a little bit, but not that much. In relation to the application part, where students are able to apply the theory, apply the concepts itself. Okay, so that is why normally when we talk about online assessments, we always regard that the students are doing an open book exam. All right, and we don't reward knowledge. We reward the application of knowledge itself. So, for example, when we talk about the marketing mix, the 4Ps: product, price, place, promotion. In a sit-down environment, you can ask the students to list the marketing mix, and then from there select 2 key ones to solve a particular problem. So under the part A, list the marketing mix. Example, we're using the traditional marketing mix of the 4Ps: product, price, place, promotion. You can give 4 marks. But in an online assessment or online exam environment, I won't even give 4 marks. Why? Because we can take it that the students will have access to this concept itself. So immediately, maybe we will do, by using the marketing mix, identify 2 key conditions that will impact blah, 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 or something like that. So this is the application context. We don't reward the knowledge context. That is where online assessment can be very different. That's why I believe many of you remembered when we were doing online assessment, there was a clear instruction to say that please concentrate on the application aspects. Don't reward the knowledge part. Because if we do our traditional exam papers, okay, in that we list and then explain these key things, okay, and we give marks as 30-40%, students can easily assess it in numerous ways, left and right. Like, see, there could be a mobile phone next to me and you do not know. All right, now we have an exam software, an official exam software, exam.net. Okay, however good it is, there is still avenue, because we can never assume that the students have only one device. All right, students can have numerous devices, even though that one allows for video. We do video surveillance using that software. So that's just picture me. I'm doing my exam over here. That, however it is, we need to consider that there is an avenue for students to get resources in different ways. Okay. So online assessments, when we talk about online assessments, there are certain key aspects that we need to look into. Key elements on online assessment security. That's number one. These assessments without clear control mechanism must be taken as an open book assessment and treated as so. So if there are no clear control mechanisms means like software and so on. So we have a software. We actually purchased, acquired UOW. We have a software. All of you, I think many of you have been using it. However, it is still not foolproof. Even our physical exam, guys, our physical exam students bring in paper to cheat also, correct or not? Nearly every semester, we have cases. We have cases of students doing that, okay? Even though it's a physical exam, write on the hand, bring in paper, smartwatch, and so on. So the list is just unlimited. So when we talk about this kind of online assessment, it is the same. Yes, majority of the students will be honest, majority. However, there is still a small percentage that will always try to take the next step to ensure better grades for themselves. Okay, so students will have access to information available to them. So what are the control mechanisms? We have browser lock, video surveillance, and so on, which our exam software actually allows. Our exam software allows for this. Okay, but I still advise my colleagues, even though you use the exam software, structure your exam paper to not emphasize too much on knowledge. Don't reward too much on just knowledge, more on the application part of it. Okay. Now, so we have types of assessment. Now, this is generally, I'm not talking about what we do over here. Currently, now the government already state we must all do physical exam. All right, it's back to normal. All right, it's back to normal for your final assessment. All right, but in a general sense, if you're doing an online assessment, it can be take-home assessment, it could be time assessment. Okay, take-home assessment is a duration. It is like write a report, 5,000 word report in 2 weeks or in 1 week. Time assessment is where you do like an exam like that lah. Okay, so when you do short, long type of assessments that you is given the opportunity to do, we have short answer questions, we have long answer questions, we have multiple choice questions, and so on. So these are just basic guides based on best practice. It is not fixed in stone. There is no one literature that say that short answer must be this, a long answer must be different literatures you read, it comes up with different answers. Okay, so when you do online assessment, you need to consider this. In a physical sense, if you sit down, exam 2 hours is different from when you're doing it online. Okay, especially if students are not familiar with the tools that they are using. Okay. However, in the past few years, it has become quite the norm. So our students are slowly getting accustomed to using this kind of technology. ACCA uses online exam. Even we are a center in UG over here. Students come and do their ACCA exams and they take the computer lab. So they actually do it online. Okay. I believe UOL, University of London, also do it online. So it is very feasible and very possible. All these big institutions, big organizations are doing it online. Okay. However, as I said, control mechanism needs to be there lah, the control itself. Okay. Assessment timing, preferably, but not must, not to have assessment over an hour. If you're doing online, do it in smaller blocks. So if you normally have a 2-hour assessment, break it down into 1 hour and run hour lah. Okay, this will reduce chances of students cheating and also less chance of technical errors. The longer you use online, the higher chance of one fella or yourself, internet got problem, computer hang, and so on. Okay, so 1 hour, 1 hour can be good. Okay, that is why even our software that we're using, exam.net, if the student's computer hangs, there are avenues that it will automatically save the paper and so on, blah, 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 and whatnot. So they have the technology behind it. If you ask me what technology, I do not know. I'm just a user. So they have that technology to ensure that it doesn't, students will not lose out on the if there's any technical issues. Okay. However, there is no way we can really ascertain. Okay. Example, I'm doing a session with you now. Okay. internet can go off. Last week, I think many of you remember last Friday, our campus, UG campus internet down. Why? Our server overheat. It happens. It really happens. So there was a duration, I think it was nearly the whole of the afternoon, from noon or from 11, where we had no access to our servers. And when there's no access to your servers, you know lah, you cannot access the net, you cannot access your files, Unitime, everything cannot use. Okay, so that is how much reliance we have on it, and it does happen, this kind of things. So we need to understand how to circumvent just in case these things happen. Okay. No wonder, yes. All right. Now, suggested methods to discourage academic dishonesty. What are the methods to discourage academic dishonesty? That now, one is called randomizing the questions. You can have 10 questions, and if students need to do 2 or 3, then you can randomize it. Okay, you can however, you need to consider I'm sorry, the first one, randomizing question, is basically if you have 10 questions that all students need to do, student 1 may get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, students 2 will be 10 to 1, students 3 will be 2, 4, 5, so on and so on. So the questions are all randomized. Now, a lot of software actually does this, okay? Now, the reason why this is because many a times, if the students want to cheat, they ask their friend, hey, question number 4, how to do? So the friend may say something else. So this student will say, hey, my question number 4 is different. So it actually deters them. If they ask it once and they know that the answer is different, it will deter them in continuing to ask or planning to cheat lah. That is why randomizing the question can be a good avenue. Okay, and if it is certain softwares, not only does it randomize, at the end of the day, when it comes out, it still comes out in the correct order. Okay, softwares today allow for many unique things. 2, have a pool of questions. All right, have a pool of questions, have different set of for different groups of students. So it is also possible. However, when you have a pool, you got to make sure every single pool is equal, assessing the correct thing, and it is equal in difficulty. All right, you cannot have pool A more difficult than pool B. Cannot. 3, stringent time limits. Okay, very fixed. You can have even shorter time limits. You can break down your assessment, even though it's 1 hour, into 15 minutes. So this say, okay, 15 minutes, finish it up. So students do not have time to cheat. Okay, so there are many ways. A lot of the current softwares that are available today allows for all of this also. 3, pacing, presenting questions one at a time. Yes. Now, there are pros and cons to the pacing concept over here. Now, what is pacing? Pacing is like this. Exam starts at 10 o'clock. So students come in, register themselves online, everything ready. Immediately, 10 o'clock, question 1 will come out. Boom. Then they do. Finish already, question 2 will come out. Then question 3 will come out. Now, this is a method, but is it there are a lot of pros and cons. Some literature will say it's good, some say not so good. Some people like they read all the questions, then they choose the key ones that they are more familiar with. So general literature states this: if you have already learned and not regurgitating, long-term memory and not short-term memory, if it comes out step by step, no issue, you will still remember. A lot of students, what they do is they read the exam paper, then they start writing notes for them to remember. This is called regurgitation, based on the fact that they just attain that knowledge a lot. So they got to make sure they can retain it, because over time that knowledge will depletion of knowledge, of storage. So that is why when they read the exam paper, they see question 2, they know something, they will write the keynotes, they write, which is highly advisable to a certain extent. But certain literature say that is not actually true learning. True learning means you really know already. You really know. That is more just regurgitating, okay, based on what is in your mind to make sure. But we know, we have done exam before. Sometimes you may understand it very well, but when you're in the exam hall, the 7 steps, you may just forget 1 or 2. So you need 5 over there. Okay, so it could be lah. Okay, so that is called the pacing method. And questions should not reward recall. So your questions that you have should not just reward the recall part, but more on the application part. Okay. Now, when you set exam question, do this lah. I think this is something which for all exam questions, regardless of online or not online, you should use it. Verb, content, and context. I always practice this also. So you always start with the verb. What are you going to do? Explain, discuss. Then the content. What is the content? Market penetration choices. The word content here is, many of you will know it as the theory or the concept. All right. Porter's 5 forces. In marketing, you have this thing of Porter's, Michael Porter's 5 forces. That is content. That is the theory. Okay. So verb plus theory plus context. Discuss something in what? So it should have this. If you have just discussed Porter's 5 forces, then it is not, that is just called a content question. Very low level. Very low level. There must be the context over there. And all of this must have clarity. Make sure it is clear. So it's all in this little box. So these 3 things is critical. When you write your question, you want to make sure you write a good question. Very easy. Just make sure you have these 3 things. Make sure you have these 3 things. Verb, content, context. Verb, content, context. Now, in which situation do you take away context? If it is low level, tahap 1, 2, dan 3, maybe certificate 1, 2, 3, or maybe diploma year 1, and it is a physical exam, then you can list the 5 steps off. Then you can. At higher level, you don't want to do that. Okay. Okay. So generally, you should look into this. Okay. Good. Regulations to state as a guide for assessment. Now, in another guide, that will be nothing that we want to stress when you're doing online assessment is come up with clear regulations. Tell your students this is an online assessment and basically what will you be doing. Tell your students that now it is online, you have the right to also take your assessment and assignment to put it into, turn it in and check. If anything, if it exceeds the threshold of 20%, we have the right to investigate. Now, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, having more than 20% doesn't mean the student plagiarize. Turn it in is not checking for plagiarism. Turn it in checks for similarity. Similarity can lead to plagiarism. Plagiarism is the crime. Similarity is not a crime. Sometimes you can write on your own words. You can write everything on your own, everything. You turn it in and it still comes out. Okay? It happens. All right? I didn't plagiarize, but it gets 22%. What does it mean? All right? So that is why when you read the terms and conditions or even turn it in, it clearly states over there, this is a similarity tool. It checks on similarity. Okay. So we as educators, it is then for us to look into it and for us to then take action if action is needed. We look at it, we read. If the percentage is pretty high, then we look, oh no, it is because students did citations, okay, and because of that it has taken or it's extracted certain things, so on and whatnot. Okay, so that is how it is. So even if we look into our guide, anything more than 20%, it is a hint for us to look into. It doesn't mean students have cheated. All right, but after that, after investigating, it could be. All right, so today what has happened is Turnitin has added in a lot of functions in its software, and it now Turnitin is able to also detect if the work has been done by artificial intelligence softwares or applications. Okay, my colleague recently, one of the students was using artificial intelligence, and she identified that over 70% of it was that, and it actually states it's extracted from and whatnot. So the lecturer asked the student, "Hey, you did your own work, how? Be honest." So the student was very honest. "Yes, ma'am, I actually did some, and then quite a few I also referred to ChatGPT." So it does work. However, as I stressed earlier on, that was a week ago. Today, ChatGPT is now version 5 or maybe version 6. The last was, I think, version 4, or maybe I'm very outdated. So sometimes the improvement of technology at times can circumvent all of these new guides or all of these new tools that are available to overcome it. So it is a non-stop chasing game. All right, non-stop. Okay. So it is good always, especially when you are doing online assessments, tell your students, whatever you send in, I'll put it in to turn it in. This is what happens. Number two, you can also tell students, if I feel that your work is questionable, I can ask you to come and do a physical exam, or I can ask you to come and justify your answer. Justify, a verbal justification, and explain why you say it. Okay, so these are different ways of looking at it. As I said, majority of the students are honest. Okay, when setting online assessments, lecturer's perspective, we are interested in testing what students have understood, not what they have been able to memorize in a few days of frantic revision. Assessment must encourage learning that targets understanding. Whatever assessment you do, it must encourage the learning in the student. Okay, and that targets the understanding. Okay, so learning knowledge is something which is long term. So this is what we want the students to do. Don't do an assessment, as I say, don't put in surprise questions, something that I put in this one, sure I hit the student, they sure don't know one, sure nobody can answer one. No. Assessments or exams are not supposed to find the fault of the student, No, it doesn't work that way. You don't do that. Okay, if something you haven't taught and you can't assess them. All right, so students must be assessed based on what is required in the course learning outcome and what has also been taught. Okay, now what about students' perspective? In students' perspective, when you look at online assessment, it is unlikely, the students know that it is unlikely that questions that just call on you to copy information. They know, students know already, a lot of questions will not just require me to regurgitate. It needs me to apply. All right. So that is one key important thing over there. I myself, even last semester, previous semesters, when we do online assessments or online aspects and so on, I tell the students, hey, don't expect it to be so straightforward. And I actually, in class, show them types of questions that I will ask. The reason is because at lower levels, let's say at a diploma level, sometimes students do not even understand the basic verbs, all right, or the action verbs or the words itself. Like when you talk about describe or you talk about compare, all right, we need to understand that many of our students may not understand those action verbs. Okay, so I will always explain to students, compare must have two elements. You cannot compare with one. Okay, so this is very important. So some students, they're so happy, they start writing, and then in the end, they don't do what is required, and they will lose out marks. So this is where it becomes critical for the students itself to understand what are these key elements to be done itself. Okay. Marking online assessments. So on the marking part itself, number 10 here is reward the application of concepts of content in relations to the context. So you don't reward the context, T-E-X-T, you reward the concept and the content, all right? The application of the concept and content. So how they apply itself, not the context. So do not reward or minimal reward description of concept of content. Example, describe the marketing mix strategies that UOW MKDU could implement during this MCO, for example. Then we reward it in relation to the context. In reward it in relation to this, how it solves this, and not just this itself. Okay, so that is one key guide when we're looking into marking online assessments. Okay, it requires us to take a next level. Now, for students who are at lower level, this is good. So they are actually taking a next level. But if you look at it, our students that come and join us, all of them have already achieved at least O levels. Okay, so if you look at O level, a student who has completed O levels or SPM should have the mental fortitude, ability to do application already, actually, seriously. They are already after SPM already, they are after O levels already, all right? They should have that ability to apply. Okay. The only thing is sometimes in class when the students demonstrate to us, it becomes a little bit discouraging. Okay, when how the students relate. All right. But no, I think it's important for us to understand that this group of students, 17, 18, 19 years old, guys, 19, 18 and 19 years old, they must be able to do this really. That is the minimum that they need to be able to do, not just regurgitate. Right. So for those who just regurgitate, then maybe they do not deserve to to attain the qualification that is stated on the paper. I think it's just as clear cut as that. Okay. And review online assessments effectiveness is close the loop. So whatever assessment you do, at the end of the day, you close the loop. You close the loop. You close the loop. If it is good, you continue. No good, you change. Good, you continue. No good, you change. Simple as that. Okay. Ta-da! So basically, what we have done, ladies and gentlemen, is we have basically gone through the whole process. All right, from the assessment context, from the delivery context, pre, post, pre, during, and also post online delivery. We also look into online practices to ensure effective outcome of the general delivery itself. And then one thing that I strongly encourage is to further emphasize on the formative part of our assessment. Okay, the formative part of assessment, if it is done correctly, if it is done effectively, your summative results will be much, much better. All right. Goes without saying, if in class you already students understand as they go along, at the end of the day, they will do well in their assignment, in their reports, and in their final exam, if they understand. So the formative eventually forms the structure for a good summative. Okay. The only thing is at times we tend to neglect this, and I don't blame you because your class is so big. Some classes are big. Some classes are also very small. I understand. I know some of you teach classes that are less than 10 students or even less than 5 students. I've even seen classes during rounds at 1 or 2 students. It happens. All right. But sometimes classes are 150 students. All right. When you look at MPU classes and so on. So how do you do the formative part? Use technology, guys. Use technology. Use Quizzy, Kahoot, and so on. And there are many, 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 many more. All right, that are available. Use it as an indicator of the comprehension and the knowledge that your class have on that particular area. On that particular, don't test them something else on that particular lesson, that packet itself. Okay, remember we're talking about packet, on that packet itself. That is something very important over there lah. Okay, but of course it will require a little bit more effort on our side lah. There must be a little bit more effort on our side to structure those kind of things, to ready those kind of tools to make sure that it is effective to use on our student. Okay. And of course, we were looking at issues on online assessment. Okay, even though now we are back to physical, I dare not say that this will not come back again. No, and I believe even now we are pushing a lot with ODL courses, ODL programs. Okay, open distance learning programs, and open distance learning programs will see quite a bit of online assessments, or I would say nearly all online assessments itself. Okay, so because of that, it is important for us to understand, and whatever normal practice that we used to do in the physical environment will not be effective in this online assessment. Okay, due to the environment, due to the conditions that the students are in, which are very, very different compared to the physical aspect. Okay, and as I said when I started off today's session, the reason why we are still so physical here and our students are so happy with this physical environment is because of the type of students that we get. Okay, so basically we have 4 different partners. We have the Australian branch, we have Hong Kong, we have Malaysia, and we have Dubai. Hong Kong and Malaysia very similar. Most of our students are full-time students sponsored by parents. Whereas over in Australia, it is the highest percentage of working adults, working individuals. Even those who are doing degree, year 1, year 2 degree, it is not uncommon for these individuals to be working individuals who now have the opportunity to study. Okay, or they are working and studying. So even though they are studying, they are young individuals, 19 years old or 20 years old, but they are also working to sustain themselves. And there's a lot. That's what I heard. There's a lot, okay, of them who are doing that. Higher cost of living now, things are so expensive, so they need to do that. That is why, and of course, Dubai, there is, so Dubai, a lot of working people also. That is why I find that a lot of our students, our general impression of the type of students that we are teaching impacts the way that we ourselves behave. So our students are more full-time students. So in a different context, if you are teaching in an organization where the students are very different, our approach to assessments will also change. Okay, based on the way that is that our students adapt and behave. Okay, and this is something which I foresee will be lah. Why? Because there is a slight drift in general demands. You see our student numbers are a little bit lower. Okay, now fine. A lot of people are taking years off from formal education. They are doing things on their own. They are trying things on their own that due to technology allows them to do it. We're talking about gig work and whatnot. But they could come to a time where they will eventually still want a qualification. And during that time, when they come back, they will be working individuals. They will be individuals who are already sustaining themselves, and now they need a qualification. And thus, that is where the traditional aspect that what we are doing over here will need to evolve. Okay, that is what I see. That is what I foresee is going to happen soon, very, very soon itself. All right. Any questions, guys? Any of you who have any questions you would like to ask, you would like to share with your colleagues over here? Hmm? I see some, wait, let me see. Any of you, you can unmute yourself to also, some only 15 after O levels. Ah, exactly. Materially say I want to become entrepreneurs. Yes, of course. Becoming an entrepreneur, yeah. Generally, it is a two-pronged thing. I mean, the young today, they want to be entrepreneurs. They see the glamorous life of what it is. However, it is of course not easy. it is not easy, and it doesn't help that a lot of jobs today, they don't pay well. So sometimes our students also put one and one or two and two together. I take a degree, I study, I pay X number of thousands. And at the end of the day, I come out, I hear from my friend, the salary is so low. So at the end of the day, why am I thinking of doing or going to formal education? Whereas I can be a influencer, I can do this, I can work in Shopee, I can do, there are so many things, even by delivering Grab, that is how that is what is happening lah. Okay, and it is quite sad to a certain extent of what we see over here. What are the challenges or issues in implementing formative assessment? Formative assessment, no issue. I mean, formative assessment for Sanjay, I think if you're not wrong, he's the one that asked. That is something which we do. We practice itself. Currently, I am doing formative assessment and I'm getting feedback from you all. And what is the formative assessment? I say, guys, any question, any feedback? And then you guys are writing in the chat over here. So this is already formative and it tells me of your understanding. It tells me of your understanding on today's session. Okay, so that is it is limitless. There are many ways of doing it. There is no one fixed method. Like for me, it's always as easy as looking at facial expressions. If you teach a class of 20 students and all of them give you this look after you finish, then you know something is wrong. That is already formative assessment. Okay, that is already formative assessment. And then whereas summative is very much driven by our COPA document. However, as I stressed, Table 4 COPA document is not set in stone. It was set during that time. Then it is a document that is alive. You're supposed to evolve. You're supposed to change as it goes. Okay. No marks awarded, no responses. Yes. So that is why sometimes it is in class, you see their expression, you see them. This general aptitude in class behavior of our students is like this. Our students, majority of them are quiet. So those that are vocal sometimes become quiet because they want to blend in with the group. You take the students who are quiet and you put them in an environment where everybody is noisy or vocal, then they themselves will become very vocal. Sometimes it is that. So it is not easy, but it is also part of our role to try to encourage this kind of sharing or this kind of openness in our class, where the students understand that it is supported, not only it is encouraged, and it is actually highly wanting for the students to come out and actually really speak up. Okay, speak out itself. Can also lah. But you give them small tidbits for the champion. Yeah, these are many, many different ways. Many, many, many different ways. So it's good. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope why isn't it moving? Yes, it should move. So I would just like to say thank you very much. I brought balloons one time. Okay. Okay, balloons. So sometimes it actually relates what kind of students we have when balloons motivate them. All right. I would like to say thank you very much. I mean, it is a good sharing session. I hope that whatever was said today, the application of it, just I don't expect 100% application, but whatever that can be used in your daily lessons, in the way that you run your classes. I think that's the only thing is we just want to make it better for students to comprehend, for students to understand, and eventually be better learners. Okay, because it is a very challenging environment that we are in, not only in student numbers, but also getting students to ascertain that the students achieve their goals itself. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Thank you very much. Thanks. Have a good holiday tomorrow.